You are listening to the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast, episode 46. This week on the show, we're reflecting back to some of our past hunts, talk about some tips that have been successful and some things that didn't work out as well for us. All right, welcome to the 46th episode of the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast. We are your on-demand audio source for all things waterfowl and waterfowl hunting, and I'm your host, Josh Palm, soon to be joined by my co-host, Dan Harushka. Dan, what's up, man?
Not too much. We're getting some cold fronts in here. I'm sure the birds are going to start showing up, but, it's beginning of November, and it's just the time that we love, We woke up and had some frost this morning, so finally getting chilly.
Yeah, we're not getting that quite yet here down where I'm at, but there are some birds showing up. So from what I hear, and season's still 2 weeks away for us, so they got some time to make that happen. But if you're new to the show this week, you can check us out at hpoutdoors.com. We're also active across all the social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, all that good stuff. If you'd like to catch up on any of the previous episodes, you can do so on iTunes and Stitcher and a lot of the other podcast databases out there. And we've also got a newsletter that you can sign up through our website. And if you go to the show notes for each episode, there's an opportunity to fill out a survey of what you think about the show. So we certainly encourage everyone to do that. So lots of ways to reach us here at HP, and we certainly encourage you guys to do so. Dan, we got a good one lined up this week. We are going to reflect back on some of our favorite hunts that we've had and talk a little bit about what we did and what made the hunt successful, and then maybe talk a little bit about some of the things we could have done differently to have a little bit even more success even.
Yeah, there's so many times that you look back and just if you could have changed this or could have changed that and it would have been successful, but it is what it is, and that's why it's hunting. So you go with your best effort at the beginning, and like we said about the Friday quick tip, if you're versatile and agile and can move around, then that helps your chances. So we'll chat about it.
I think you just dropped a line from Remember the Titans.
I tried.
Is that
agile, versatile.
I gotcha. All right. Yeah, for me, it's so many times I look back on a hunt, and even if it was a successful hunt, I might say, yeah, we took X amount of birds, but we should have taken this amount of birds, because there's always something that seems to not work out quite right. So we'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff today, kind of as we get going. But let's roll right into the first piece of the show today and cover a little bit of waterfowl news. All right, Dan, go ahead. Start us off.
All righty. Coming from Utah, the Division of Wildlife Resources is recommending several changes for Utah's 2016-17 waterfowl hunting season, starting out by allowing those 17 years of age and younger to participate in the state's youth waterfowl hunt. And 2 goose hunting changes top the list. In the past, only those who are 15 or younger could hunt in the youth waterfowl hunt. And let's see, September 17th, 2016 is the proposed date. So I've never hunted Utah. It says that, extensive hunter surveys and input. They are recommending also a dark goose hunting change in northern Utah, and the change would allow Canada goose hunting to take place later into the winter across most of the northern part of the state. So these are just recommendations that they're coming out with, and there are a few places that you can go to let your voice be heard. So check into that if you're from Utah and want to see some changes.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of discussion lately about season dates and things like that. And obviously Utah has put an initiative forward to try to get more, youth and new hunters involved in the sport, which we certainly support. So if you're out in Utah and you've got a dog in that fight, definitely chime in and let your voice be heard. Dan, for my story this week, I know we talked about this ahead of time, and I cannot believe that you just didn't jump all over this story when it was released, due to your level of man crushdom for Tony Vandemore. But it was announced recently that Tony, friend of the show here, is been added to the roster of elite outdoor athletes at Under Armour. And, Tony's one of the most recognizable kind of names and figures in the waterfowl industry. And obviously the success of Habitat Flats goes without saying. But, Tony's also a published outdoor photographer and does a lot of writing, and you can read a lot from him in DU magazines and stuff. So he's out there all over the place. And basically, he's now partnered up with Under Armour, and he's going to serve as their lead ambassador for the 2016 Waterfowl Initiative. So they basically educate, hunting and conservation communities about, the Under Armour outdoor apparel and what they offer. So, Tony's a well-respected professional across the industry. So that's a huge land for Under Armour, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of, a lot of big players in that space, and Under Armour is probably one of the newer ones, relatively speaking, when you can talk about Drake and the Mossy Oak families and the Realtree families and all that kind of stuff. So for Under Armour to come in and take the lead is a big step. And I think the thing to take away from this, Dan, is that this kind of shows you the impact that waterfowl hunters have on the global landscape. I mean, a company the size of Under Armour has realized that that's an opportunity and a resource. So they're putting their money, in place to support the likes of Tony and, Kelly Powers and, the Lee and Tiffany on the whitetail side, all that kind of stuff. So, I'm a big fan of seeing these companies get involved, because all that's going to do is create better products for us as the hunter, as the end user. So, I think it's a great news seeing Tony getting involved at that level. And I would only think that that's going to benefit Under Armour and hopefully the products that, they're pushing out.
Yeah, we had Kelly and Tony both on the show, and both of those are just gold mines for Under Armour to have in the industry, like you're saying. And, Trevor Shanahan that we had on, he's now a part of the team Under Armour hunt team. And, so congrats to all those guys. And like you said, and Under Armour is now, they have a new line out that is utilizing Gore-Tex. So that's a huge advantage for anyone going out into the field too. So, they're definitely stepping up their game in the industry here.
Yep, without question. And, we're obviously big fans of Gore-Tex. So, I think Under Armour is going to make a serious push here. So, another force in the market to be reckoned with. So, that's this week's waterfowl news, and let's roll into this week's Ask HP question of the week.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This week's Ask HP question is brought to you by Higdon Outdoors. Quality service innovation, that is Higdon Outdoors. Check out HigdonDecoys.com. All right, Dan, this week's question comes again from our Facebook group. Scott Brewington asks us, when is it too young to take your kids into out in the field for their first hunt? And he's obviously concerned about, they're getting too cold and having a miserable time and sort of not wanting to go again. So I think this is a great question. Dan, what do you think?
I think it varies greatly. You could have some guys in Florida that have no problem taking their 4-year-old out, and then you might have guys in North Dakota that a 4-year-old just might physically not be able to handle being outside very long. So, Taylor's here, he's 4 now, right? So, depending on what time of the year, September, to take him out, it'd probably be fun and you could keep him interested. But, come January, it might be a struggle to keep him really in the game. I remember going out deer hunting with my dad, and it was nice because if I got way too cold, I could just walk back to the truck, turn the truck on for a little bit, and have the heater on and get warmed up, and then go back and join them in the stand. And that was probably 10. So that was really chilly times. But if you're taking a boat ride and there's not a immediate source of heat to get them warmed up, 4-year-old that doesn't weigh too much might get a little chilled. So it really there's no blanket answer on this one. If you know how long that they can stay out and stay interested, I'd take a 4-year-old with me. But if it's really chilly, then just know the limitations of your child.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much kind of the same thing, I think. But there's some things that you should probably be aware of. Obviously, if you actually plan on trying to shoot a duck with your child in this blind, I mean, gun recoil can be a pretty shocking thing for a kid. First off, so I don't know if in the blind is probably the best first time for them to hear that. As long as you're prepping them, throughout the summer, maybe, you're outside and you get your protection on and you expose them to a little bit of, that kind of thing. But for me personally, 4 years old is too young for my son. He doesn't have the attention span at all. He would not be interested in sitting there for more than 10 minutes, without throwing something around or whatever. So, for me, like last weekend, him and I went walking in the woods and just let him play in the trout stream and throw rocks and poke sticks at leaves and try to catch crayfish and stuff like that. So it'll be a little bit longer before, I expose my son to, a real situation. But, every situation is different. And I think that, probably if you're going to take your child out into the field, just be aware that, temper your expectations of shooting limits and, be prepared to pack up after 30 minutes if you have to. Because like Scott asked, I think the biggest thing is don't make it a bad experience where they don't want to do it again. So if it's 5 minutes, if it's 2 hours, whatever you can get, be happy with that and then move on. So, yeah, great question. Scott, shoot us your info. We'll get you out an HP Outdoor barrel sticker for helping out the show. And if anyone else wants to have a question answered by us and get a free decal, you can send us a message through any of the social medias. You can send us an email at info@hpoutdoors.com. If we pick your question, you will get a free barrel sticker sent to you. So thank you, Scott, for your help this week. And we look forward to another question next week. All right, Dan, let's roll forward here with the show and get into our retriever training quick tip brought to you by Barton Ramsey and Southern Oak Kennels. And we'll kind of talk about this one on the other side. So let's get into that right now.
Hey guys, this is Barton Ramsey with Southern Oak Kennels, coming to you with your retriever training quick tip of the episode. I want to talk this week about puppy versus started versus finished dog. We get a lot of questions from folks asking whether they should buy a puppy or whether they should get a started dog. And there's no right or wrong answer that's universal for everyone. A lot of it depends on life stages. I will say if you cannot spend a good bit of time in the day, if you're someone who works full-time and you're gone from 8 a.m. to sometimes 6 p.m. every day of the week, a puppy is not a good option for you unless you have a wife or some children who are at home willing to take care of the puppy. If you have no patience, or if you live in an apartment, or if you just aren't in a stage of life where you're going to be able to properly socialize and raise a puppy, then we would recommend going the started dog route. If you are someone who wants the full experience and you do have time and you do have the space to raise a puppy, then we recommend going that route. We recommend doing all the socialization yourself, raising the puppy in your home so that the puppy grows up knowing what the expectations are of your home. That can be very helpful. Financially, the only difference is whether or not you're going to spend the money up front or whether or not you're going to space it out over time if you plan on having someone else do the training for you. Now, if you plan on training the dog yourself, you will save money buying a puppy, but you'll make up for that with the time you spend training your puppy, which is good. We recommend that. If you're going to, let's just say from Southern Oak Kennels, buy a puppy, you're looking anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 for a puppy, depending on whether it's born here or imported. And taking that puppy home, if you do all the training yourself, then there won't be any more expense, except for vet bills and food and all of that, which are going to be the same either way. Your puppy's not going to be ready to hunt, most likely, until it's around a year old, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. So if you're in a hurry to have a hunting companion, puppy is not a good route. If you're going to do a started dog, you have to ask the kennel you're talking to about the dog to clearly define the dog's abilities. People will say, I've got a started dog for sale. Well, what does that mean? Is the dog steady? Is the dog doing singles or doubles? Is the dog running long memories? Has the dog been introduced to gunfire and swimming and decoys? What does it mean by a started dog? And so be careful to clarify that. Finished dog, what does that mean? How finished? Is the dog seasoned? Is the dog able to hunt right now? Be sure to clarify those terms, and then take into account, typically, a month of training at a kennel is going to be somewhere between $500 and $800. And so how many months do you think it's going to take to get a dog to that level? And that's going to be somewhere around the price you can expect for the dog. So added to the puppy price, of course. So if you've got a $1,500 puppy that is now a year and a half old and has 5 good months of training, then you've got $2,500 minimal in the training and $1,500 in the puppy. So you've got a $4,000 dog. Sometimes more. For us at our kennel, it's $650 a month. So you've got a $4,500 or a $5,000 dog at that level. You're going to spend that money either way if you're not going to do the training. The question is, are you going to spend it up front, or are you going to stretch it out, pay monthly for the training when the dog is ready to be trained? People will ask questions about whether or not a started dog will bond with them. If the dog is properly socialized, and I would highly recommend spending some time with the dog before you purchase. If the dog is properly socialized, 99% of the time, Labradors are going to have zero issues integrating right into your family, being a part of your family. A Lab is always going to look for a trustworthy leader or alpha to lead, guide, and direct him. And so that can easily become you. I have had zero issues with our Labradors that we sell that are started or finished adjusting into their homes properly if those dogs were socialized well as a puppy. So you want to check into all that. You want to make sure the dog is, and I don't mean that they're not a little bit nervous around new things sometimes. That's fine. That's typical. But if the dog is able to overcome that, there'll be no problems with the dog integrating into your family. And so you may miss out on some of the puppy socialization, but on the bright side, you won't have to crate train and clean up messes all over your house. So bottom line is there are pros and cons of each one. You need to evaluate your life, ask yourself the important questions. Which one do I have more time or less time for? Which one are we better suited for as a family, with our home, financially, and make the best decision going from there. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
All right, again, thank you to Barton for providing the quick tip this week. You can check out Southern Oak Kennels online across all the social media sites. His stuff is definitely easy to find out there. So, all right, Dan, what do you think? Where do you stand? Puppy versus started dog versus finished dog? Where do you stand on how you make that decision?
I agree with him with, if you don't have the time to put into a puppy, then you probably shouldn't get one. But also a great point that he made, wherever you get your dog at, make sure you get the definition of a started dog versus a finished dog, and what that means, if they're steady, if they're doing singles or doubles or whatever they're doing. That's a great point, because definitions might be a little bit different between different breeders. So definitely something that you want to look into. I always thought, or I guess it was a worry of mine, if I were to get a started or a finished dog, then how would that dog respond to me when I picked him up? I've met the dog once, or if it's across a few states, I've never met the dog. So when I picked the dog up from the airport or drove down for the first time, would that dog listen to me? And he makes a great point. If it's properly socialized, then there should be no problem whatsoever of that dog just, becoming part of your family. So great points by him. And, I enjoy getting a puppy and teaching myself, and I think this segment has definitely helped me realize that I have a lot more to learn. But great point by Barton, and definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, and I think it also kind of depends on, like he mentioned, what you're looking for out of your dog. I mean, even if you don't have multiple hours per day to spend with a puppy, as you've seen, you can get your dog to a very respectable working level by doing it yourself. Now, if you're looking for a world-class hunt trial field dog, type of thing, like you want to get all into that, then obviously you need to do a little bit more intensive training and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's one thing to consider. And for me personally, it's just kind of one of those things where it would feel more satisfaction for me to know that I trained the dog from the start when, he or she goes out and makes that first, retrieve and all that kind of stuff. So I tend to lean towards the puppy myself. But, everyone's got different needs and all that kind of stuff. So definitely one to think about. And the other thing I would just say is if you're going to get a finished dog or a started dog, it really is incumbent upon you to do a lot more research into the breeder to find out what they do and their philosophies and their strategies, and make sure that meshes up with what you want to do and what you have envisioned. Because, as we've seen, training styles can range from one side of the coin to the other. And if you've got one mindset as to how the dog should work and things like that, but the dog was trained a completely different way, I mean, obviously that's going to be a tough start to the relationship. So doing that thought process up front, I think is pretty important when, making the selection of whether you want to do a started dog or what have you.
Those are great points.
Yes. All right, let's go ahead. And we want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of our favorite hunts and some takeaways and things like that. So let's roll into it, this week's main part of the show. All right, Dan. So the idea for this week's topic was to pretty much kind of think back to some of the, the better hunts that we've had, and sort of, reflect back on what we did that made that hunt a success, and maybe what we could have done to make it a little more successful. So why don't you go ahead and start us off and talk to me about one of your hunts?
Sure. And this one just goes back to last year, 2014, and we had a few hunts in cut corn where we hid in the corn, and the hunts were, they were okay. We killed some birds and whatnot, but on this one that I'm talking about, there was a big front coming in, a snowstorm. We didn't expect to get rain and ice like we did, but
Hang on, before you go. When that front came in, did you note that on the DU migration app that like the front was coming in and then birds would be moving around, or no?
I should have, but I didn't have time. I don't know.
All right.
I thought about it, but anyway, so ice storm, field goose hunt. We set up. I think we had probably four or five full bodies, and I
love full dozen decoys.
Full dozens instead of half dozens, and 2 dozen silos we put out. So there's 6 guys. We could have sat in the corn, but talking it over, everyone had snow covers, so we ended up opting out of standing in the corn, and we said let's get right out in the field. Kick some snow to the side, and it was just one of those days that really nothing went wrong. I think we could have stayed there all day and killed geese just because they were, for some reason, they were super hungry. They wanted to be in that field exactly where we were at, and it was one of the best hunts I've ever been on. So, we got our limit of 30 geese, and we could have killed well over 200 geese that day. They would not leave us. So, we've talked about it before, but necessity of food and living day to day, that was a really good hunt, and I'm glad that we did not opt to stand in the corn because they would have been a little bit out of our reach. So that's a good one to look back on for me.
Well, so let me ask you some questions about that hunt.
Yes.
So how did you pick that field? I mean, had you seen birds in that field? How did you know 4 to 5 full dozen decoys with with a couple dozen silos and stuff, like, how did you know, or what kind of went behind deciding on to go with that number of decoys and all that kind of stuff?
There were days leading up to that. There were about 100 geese in that field, and we didn't want to match what was actually there, so we went a little less. 4 dozen. Four full dozen. Now I'm just off my game here. And then 2 dozen. The silos we pretty much put around the blinds just in case there were any shadows. We wanted to break them up. So that's kind of how we went about that. But the scouting, like I said, there were about 100 geese in it the day before, and we didn't want to match the 100 that were in the field. So we went a little short of that, and that's kind of how we came up with that. And it just happened to have just a nasty, nasty ice storm came in, and it was game on.
And you said you actually kicked around some snow so that the birds in the air could see the grass, like see the cut
Right.
corn, like right, like you could see the color, so they knew that food was accessible
Right.
there. Yeah, I think that's a cool little tip, because a lot of guys, I think, get worried about, tracking boot tracks around and all that kind of stuff. And the easy answer to that is just kick the snow up, make it look like deer have been in there pawing it or whatever. And, birds come in behind that and capitalize.
That's one thing that we try not to do when we are hunting snow, is try not to walk around your blinds. And I know it's very difficult, but if you're standing outside your blind, maybe just stand in your blind. But if there are tracks, make it out where your decoys are. Make it look like the geese are scratching around, or like you said, deer were pawing at it. But try to stay as natural in your blind as possible. And that's something that a lot of people struggle to do. They're always jumping up and walking right around their blind and sitting outside it or whatever they're doing. But it definitely it just brings attention to your blinds, and you don't want to do that. So try not to walk around your blinds in the snow.
Right, because, it's not like your blind can mimic footprints in the snow, so that can kind of expose your hide a little bit. So, all right, let me talk about one of my hunts, Dan. My hunt, I'm actually going to reflect back to just this past September. And this was one that I'll always remember because, I live in an area that's pretty heavily populated, and, most of the areas that I hunt are kind of right on that line of where suburbia meets rural area. And most of the rural folks are pretty, they're hesitant to let people on their farms and all that kind of stuff. And it's not unlike anywhere else, but we got a lot of that going on here. And so we were out scouting, and we found a spot where we knew this pond had historically held a lot of geese, and never really had seen anybody hunting it, and it was kind of weird. So we pull up to the driveway, to ask permission, and we stop because there's like posted signs, and it's just, it's got all the signs of like, don't even bother asking, right? So we talk it over, and I'm kind of like, yeah, let's look for somewhere else. So we turn around and to leave, and my buddy Carlos that I was with, he says, he kind of gives me that extra nudge, like, come on, we're here. Like, look at all those birds. And I don't know what it was, but it's kind of like, all right, let's do it. Heck with it. So we turn around and we go back up in the driveway, pull in. The guy couldn't be nicer. Basically, we start the discussion by asking for fishing permission, which he shuts down. And he talks about how he doesn't like people fishing there because they leave fish in line and all this other stuff. And then at that point, we're like, well, all right, this probably isn't going to happen, but we throw it out there. What about the geese? And he says, well, that's a different story. And we were like, what? It was so exciting. And, he gives us permission to hunt them. We go out there our first time that we hunt, and, we watch wood ducks and teal and all kinds of stuff coming into this pond, for the first hour or so. And then once the geese started coming in, the floodgates opened, and we just, for about 45 minutes had just literally birds are coming in and you're taking out two with one shot half the time. It was just, it was just a crazy, crazy hunt. And we ended up taking a 2-man limit, which in Virginia early season is 10 per man. So we had 20 birds in, maybe 45 minutes between two guys shooting. And it was just an awesome hunt. And, it's just one of those hunts. It just would have never happened had we not had the courage to go to the door and ask for permission. So, there's nothing so much special about that hunt because we were on the X, buddy. It was, every bird in the area was coming to that spot, but it was because we had the guts to ask, and now we have written permission on that spot. So we'll probably hunt some more there this year when the weather gets cold. So, a lot of opportunities can be missed for fear of rejection or just for fear of thinking that they're going to reject you. So I think my thing to reflect back is just, don't be afraid to ask, and, don't be afraid to get creative with your methods of asking. I know, when we talked about getting permission, in a past episode, we made the recommendation about, drafting up a letter and sending it to them or putting it in their mailbox and explaining why you're doing that, because you don't want to, intrude and, you want to respect their time and that kind of stuff. And I know we've had feedback from people that listen to the show that have done that and have had success and have gained permission to new spots by using that technique. So whatever it is, if you feel more comfortable with that, that's better than not asking at all. So if that's the way you got to do it, try it out. But, it's one of the most memorable hunts I've ever had, just because of the sheer number of birds that were on us and the whole circumstances, how it came to be. But had I never asked, or had we never asked, that wouldn't have happened. So
tell me about the actual pond that you're hunting, like the depth and food.
Yeah, so it's a pretty big pond. I don't really know the size, but it's a big pond that's got some islands in it, like a fairly large island and then a smaller one. But the whole pond is probably no deeper than maybe 5 feet. Maybe it might get down to like 10 right at the dam, but that's just like a small side of it that we don't really hunt. But almost the complete thing is covered in duckweed. So I mean, there was just teal in there feeding, and I mean, the hunt is such an interesting setup, because they roost on a lake that's, several 100-acre lake that can't be hunted, and it's maybe a mile away, maybe not even that far. And they just lift up off the water and they literally fly up to this pond. And they do that because it's got the loafing, security that they like, but it also has all the food that they need. So they don't have to go hit like a grain field or a grass field or anything like that. They come there and get both. So it's what I like to call that holy grail, where it's a non-roosting loafing pond, and it's got food too. So it's just, it's easy for them to doubt. You drive by there and you'll see at any given time 60% of the geese with their butts up in the air feeding, because, they can get easy access because of the depth of the water and stuff like that. So it's just a really cool pond, and, definitely, a lot provides food and roost for, or not roost, but loafing area for a lot of birds. And as the season gets going and gets colder here, a lot of birds congregate on that spot. So we've got high hopes for this season on that pond.
I think I need a bulldozer. That's it. I need to create just a waterfowl haven in my backyard here. But speaking to pond or swamp hunting, there's a place that we always hunt, and it's a beaver pond, and there were some issues with the dam this year that actually drained the pond down quite a bit, and it allowed just tons of different grasses and weeds to grow up. And speaking to this hunt, it wasn't more than a couple weeks ago, but snow and rain here in October, are set up. We're talking probably, I don't want to say the acreage wrong on the size of the swamp, because I know I'll get corrected, but I don't know, maybe 6 acres, 7 acres, somewhere around there. You've been there. Do you think that's about accurate? Somewhere around there?
It's been a while, man. I can't even really recall, to be honest with you.
So there's a lot of tall grass now, a lot of little, just little potholes all through it. But we tried to actually set up decoys in the areas that we didn't want them landing, kind of to flood them out, if you will, and have them come into the spot where we wanted them to land. So, we set up woodies, teal, probably, I think we had 3 or 4 dozen mallards all set up throughout this area. And we ended up putting out 2 honker decoys as well. But just the necessity for the need for food, there were so many wood ducks flying. It was something that we don't see around here that much. Just 2 hours worth of nice groups flying back and forth, and we ended up with a 5-man limit of wood ducks. So, the wood duck limit's 3, killed 15 birds, missed a bunch more, and definitely a ton more that were flying. So, that was very good to see for the wood duck population to be that nice around here. And I know other guys had a lot of good shoots in this area too. So, keep putting up the wood duck boxes, and that was, just a great hunt. I hope it's the same next year for when they're still around.
Well, it's one of those things that Tony talked about, Vandermoor, when we had him on the show, and we were talking about habitat management, and so often our first inclination is to want to plant millet or, something like that. And, like he said, sometimes habitat management is just knowing when to drain the water off, or being able to drain the water off of a spot and letting sun get down to the, to the ground where it can help grow natural plants that are feed, and then flooding it back up at the appropriate time. So you guys are just fortunate enough to have that naturally happen for you guys. But that's something that, people do to manage their property. And as you guys, saw, it can be awesome, such an incredible benefit. And, if that was an impoundment that you were managing or something like that, that's a no cost food plot, essentially. That's just nature doing its thing. And that's why, I think a lot of the initiatives and stuff that DU gets involved with are in these prairie pothole regions where they are these grasses and stuff that provide food and nesting cover. And then as you go down the flyway, that's just like this. That's what they need. They need that food. And, they certainly have the ability to find a 6-acre beaver pond or whatever it is, and zone in on that. And, it's just kind of a remarkable deal how they're able to figure that out.
But I guess, talking back about tips and whatnot, definitely, I think we could have changed our location. Even it would have been a little difficult to get over there after the sun was up, but it would have been worthwhile shooting just the way they were coming in. It would have been a lot more swing shooting than them landing right in our face, but I think we probably would have got a few more shots and been out of there without, banging up too many more groups. So it's one of those times where we could have moved. We still got our limit, but, it was probably iffy, and we did watch quite a few land on the other side where we maybe should have set up. So there weren't really there were just so many birds landing in different areas, and I think that we're getting enough of the share to where it justified not moving, but something that could have happened, but we chose against it. So
yeah, I think it's that's kind of one of those make or break moments of any kind of hunt where you have to decide, am I staying here? Am I going to go? What are we going to do? You had the benefit of having enough birds in the area where that didn't really become a complete issue. But we've all been in goose hunts and stuff where we've sat there and watched every single bird go in across across the road or into the other field. And, that's kind of one of those times where you got to say, all right, we got to pick it up and do something here because, this obviously isn't working. So you guys had the benefit of still having some success to kind of hang your hat on there. Dan, I'm not the only one that has dealt with this particularly this year, but, one of the biggest drawbacks of hunting early in the year is you get these big, massive patches of fog that roll in. And, it makes it very, very challenging, obviously, to hunt. And that's exactly what I was dealing with this year in October. Got out on the river, and man, we were just locked in with fog. Locked in. And it had a noticeable impact on the bird flight. I mean, there essentially was none. But, the biggest thing I think to think about when you're hunting with fog is that obviously any birds that you're going to, that are going to fly, you're going to hear them likely before you're going to see them. So, kind of being more keen to that is sort of a simple thing to say, but I think it's probably one that guys tend to overlook. I mean, it's almost more like becomes like a deer hunt where you got to kind of be quiet and kind of sort of use your other senses to see, when the birds are flying. And for our particular hunt, we didn't have a great hunt in bird wise. What made the hunt great for me was we ended up taking 2 banded wood ducks, and that was the only ducks we killed, but they were both banded. But, the thing that I noticed about that particular hunt was there was a moment in the morning, maybe 30 minutes max, but it was a slight break in the fog. And we saw more birds flying that morning. That's when we harvested those birds. And then a little bit later, the fog came right back in, and that pretty much shut it down. So I think the thing that I took away from that is when you're dealing with a hunt, where you're challenged with fog, there may be a small window in the morning where, the sun burns a little bit off, or the wind picks up for a little bit, or the thermals shift it, a little bit. Something happens that kind of creates that break. And when that break happens, you need to be ready, because that might be the only time the birds fly all morning. And it's just kind of like, deer hunting after a storm or a front like that. something changes and it motivates them to move at that particular time. And I'm not sure what it is, but it just certainly seems like when you get that little break, you got to be ready, because that's about, sometimes the only opportunities that you're going to get. And, like I said, it wasn't a great hunt for us in bird harvest numbers, but it's one that I'll always remember because it was, a couple banded wood ducks, which, haven't killed a bunch of bands in my life and haven't, I've seen a bunch killed on hunts that I've been on and stuff like that. But, it's just one of those things where you don't expect to shoot two birds and have them both be banded. So it was a cool hunt for me in that regard. But, the fog definitely played a significant impact, on our ability to take any more birds out.
Yeah, the exact same thing happened with, our duck opener up here, which we were allowed to shoot geese too, but, it was till 10 o'clock, and we finally said, let's pick it up, and we got out of the swamp, and there was just sunny skies everywhere else. So it was just where we were at, where it was really foggy, but that little break, we had a goose come in, and we dropped the goose, and then had a wood duck fly by. Actually had a pair. We got one. So same thing, and it can be very difficult. And like you said, you can hear them before you see them, and there's a lot of truth to that as well. But another hunt I want to talk about, which we did all limit out. The limit on canvasbacks was 1. But a 5-man limit of canvasbacks and down in Maryland last time we went. And, the guide did the whole setup. I guess long lines better than I do, but I guess we used Texas rigs on those anyways. But, took a boat out and put the rigs out, and I want to say we probably had, 4 dozen decoys out, and then a couple of those what do you call those goose decoys? The triangle silos.
Yeah, they were the V boards. We had more than 4 dozen decoys out there, man. There was a lot.
Yeah,
it was definitely more than 4 dozen.
Well, a boat full.
It might have even been double that. I mean, it was a lot, I thought.
That was some cold water too. The guide had to ride the boat in circles just to get the ice out of our spot. So. That was before we put all the decoys out. But, a 5-man limit of cans. We killed some geese that morning too, but just watching the canvasback migration go down through there was absolutely incredible. And, the Eastern Shore is known for that, but to actually go there and see that, it's just one of those things that, I hope that one day I get to take my son down there and join up with you again, and you and your son, and really get to see that again, because it was just, I keep going back to incredible, but there's no other way to mention it. I mean, just thousands of canvasbacks coming down through that river.
Yeah, there's, in the world of waterfowl, the Atlantic flyway is kind of, we're disadvantaged in a lot of ways. We don't get the big mallard flights. We don't get the big teal flights. We don't see a lot of the stuff that the guys in the Mississippi flyways and Central flyways and, that kind of stuff they get as shared numbers. But, there's one area that we do get, sort of the world-class level of migration, and that is with, the cans, and we get it with, the Canada geese. You see some pretty staggering numbers of geese coming down to winter on the Eastern Shore. But that canvasback flight, the cans coming down Susquehanna Flats and coming down to the Chesapeake is just, that's something that I'll always remember. And I remember looking at that, watching that hunt. We would see flocks of 60, 70, 80 cans at a time coming by and giving us a look. And I was having a hard time picking out a single hen in any of those big flocks. So, it's just so much of the bright white that you see kind of flickering in the sun and stuff like that. It's just a really, really cool thing. And, that hunt to me is one that I'll always remember because of that volume of numbers. But, there's just something special about that particular area for me. And the temperatures were cold and, good buddies and all that kind of stuff. It was just a really, really cool hunt that I'll always remember. And, I think that if you had some decoys out, you'd probably get your cracks at cans, regardless of what your tactics were that day, because there was just so many. But yeah, that's one that I'll always look back to.
I have a buddy that I work with, and he travels quite a bit, but he's probably 50, low mid 50s, somewhere around there, but grew up on the Eastern Shore, and back when they used to really hammer birds, and not that like they don't now, but he just tells me stories all the time. But he's working in southern Ohio right now, and he's like, guess what I saw the other day? And I was like, what's that? He's like, there's a flock of geese, and there's one duck with it. And he's like, guess what duck it was? And I was like, well, probably because we talk about it all the time, probably a canvasback. He's like, there's a canvasback flying with these local geese around here. He's like, I can't wrap my head around it. So, he's down, I guess, west of St. Clairsville in that area. And, he was just like, I couldn't believe it, but, I know a canvasback when I see it, and it definitely was. So, that was kind of cool to hear that they were over there too.
Yeah, and I'm really excited that we got a two bird limit on canvasbacks this season here in Virginia. So I'm hoping to get a little more opportunities, because not only are they just they're probably my favorite duck to look at. I'm actually expecting the first canvasback I ever killed should be coming back from the taxidermist here in the next couple 2-3 months. So I'm really excited to get that back. But just they're great table fare. Just a really fun duck to hunt. So looking forward to that. And actually, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and they're pretty. Just the the chestnut color kind of resembles my beard. It's gonna be on your mantle.
Does not resemble your beard. Talking about canvasbacks though, and diver ducks in general, that leads me to my last hunt. And it's not really a hunt, it's a series of hunts. But once I moved to Virginia, which is odd because, living up near Lake Erie, growing up and all that kind of stuff, my roots are in deer and turkey hunting. But growing up, converting to a waterfowler and, starting to hunt the Potomac River down here kind of turned me on to diver duck hunting. And, for most people, when they think duck hunting, they think mallards backflapping over the decoys and stuff like that. For me, when I first started hunting the river and got, set up on the long lines and doing that style of hunting, man, it was like something that just kind of, it was like an awakening almost, kind of like it was when I went to my first duck hunt and I watched that first, mallard come into the decoys. It was sort of a game changer in the same way that diver duck hunting was for me when, I see a knot of bluebills coming by, just, storming right into the decoys and buzzing the lines, and just the action and the pace, and, just all of how much the decoys, how effective they were and all that kind of stuff. It just was a game changer for me. So I think my last thing is, as far as I reflect back on successful hunts, is if you live in an area where you get a lot of diver ducks, you may not target them specifically. You may kill some diver ducks over your mallard spread and that kind of stuff, but it's worth a shot targeting them specifically, because you get these crazy mixed bags, you get some fast shooting action, just another opportunity, to expand the horizons a little bit. And, for me to go out and have a hunt where I shoot maybe a bubblehead and a couple bluebills and maybe a redhead or a ringneck or something like that in the mix, it's just cool. I love the variety. That's what I love about waterfowl hunting in general. But the diver duck, style of hunting is a good one, especially if you're hunting a lot of public water and that kind of stuff, because, you can get out there in the middle of an open area, dropping your long lines. If you hold still, you don't even need a blind on your boat half the time, and they're just going to bomb right in on you and, give you some of the fastest low to the water shooting that you've ever seen. So, if you haven't, that's sort of my other thing. Just give it a look and kind of consider it. And don't limit yourself to just hunting swamps and stuff. And then when that water locks up, you're kind of out of luck. Head to the big water, shoot those diver ducks. Where we are, if I counted my whole waterfowl season on just shooting mallards, it would be a long season, because we don't get a ton of mallards. We're more likely to shoot ringnecks, black ducks, things like that, where we do get some mallards, but that's not what we're filling our bag limits with on a regular basis here.
I feel like that was pointed at me.
It wasn't intentionally, but now that you mention it, it does kind of resonate.
Oh, and I'm surprised you didn't say anything about the gadwall hunt that we had up here too. That was a good one.
It was. I just when I think about that hunt, I think that was sort of another kind of echoing what I said about my September goose hunt, where we just got in a spot that hadn't had a lot of hunting pressure and just held a bunch of ducks. And, it was just sort of lock up and load and shoot straight, and you were going to kill a bunch of ducks. So, although I know you remember this, when I did just completely work that one gadwall.
Oh, you did.
Where it came in and he circled and flew away, and then I let him get out and Hale called him back, and everyone just kind of, it was one of those situations where it was one duck and everyone else just kind of sat there, guns down. And
all the pressure's on you for sure.
Yep. Pulled up and folded him right over the decoys. That was a really fun hunt. That day.
Was, and one of the best quotes ever in the duck swamp. My brother was standing there and shot one time, dropped 2 ducks with one shot, and they weren't coming in like into your face. It was pass shooting. It was up a little bit too. And he just screams out, "Double!" And it was the one bird landed about 10 feet in front of me, and the other one landed right at my feet, and I actually got splashed. So that was, just a cool little story there.
Yeah, we talk about, back to the Heartland waterfowl episode, how they say, get your blind Brody, and, they'll use it and it has no application to, why they're saying it that day, but it's a historical thing that they've kind of said. And that's sort of how the whole double thing has transformed for us. Once in a while you'll hear us, we'll just be like, double, no one knows what we're talking about, but we know that it, dates back to that hunt in that particular moment. So, it was definitely a cool one. And the funny thing about that hunt was we were all still pretty, kind of not new, but like we were still kind of naive to duck hunting a little bit at that time. And, the guy that was archery hunting that spot told us that was just seeing wood ducks piling in there. And, we get in there and all of a sudden we start shooting these other ducks. We're like, these aren't wood ducks, and, we weren't expecting to get in there on a pile of gadwalls, but that's, all that we saw that morning, I'm pretty sure. And, it was really cool. It was really, I think we actually killed a couple teal. There
were a couple teal and gaddies. Did we kill a? No, just teal and gadwall.
Yeah, just teal and gadwall that day, but definitely a cool hunt, definitely a fun hunt. So one that I'll always remember for sure.
Good stuff. What
else you got? You got any others you want to reflect back?
Was there one widgeon in that too, or was it all gadwall? I want to say there might have been a widgeon.
You might be right. You might be right about that. I'd have to look at the pictures again, but you might be right.
No, I think there's just some of those times that, like you said, you get on the X and straight shoot and it'll do it to you. And, just sometimes experience and knowing why you messed up, whether it was, sitting in corn the last time and you make an adjustment and make sure everyone has snow blinds and you get out in the field and you're right where they want to be, just making that 30-yard adjustment might be the difference between watching them land and watching them land right on your face. So, I don't think this was a very informative episode, but a few tips here and there. But it was mostly just some storytelling, and I enjoyed hearing it.
Yeah, I think honestly, like for me, I kind of want to get into more storytelling on the show because I think, that in the essence of hunting in general, storytelling is sort of part of the fabric of the community and being able to share experiences with people. And when you talk about having geese flapping in your face, although it's your story and your hunt, I feel that, I know what that feeling's like. And, I enjoy hearing it too. But I think the other overarching theme of this episode is that even on your successful hunts, even on your best days, when you you don't even think you could have done anything better, there's always something to learn about that hunt and something that you can file away for next time that will hopefully help you replicate that experience, because we all know that it's hard to do. It's hard to get those days where the stars all align and you just can't do anything wrong and you can't reload fast enough, and everyone's shooting like a crack shot Olympic, level shooter and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort goes into getting that, formulated. And if you think back a little bit and just remember those hunts and remember more than just the success, but remember the process, there's a lot that you can take away and that you can learn from your own experiences. So that sort of self-evaluation, both good and bad, is something that we want you guys to keep in mind and, always be mindful of. And I know recently in the Facebook group, a lot of guys have been talking about keeping journals and things like that. That's all really, really good stuff. And if you don't do that, you might want to consider just jotting notes down about your hunts and what you saw, what you killed, what the conditions were, and all that kind of stuff, because you will see patterns develop over time, and you can use that data to kind of help yourself, especially if you're hunting like a refuge situation where there's certain spots that you have to hunt from, and you kind of track where you've hunted from and what you saw, and it'll help you better project, hopefully what would happen in the future. So all really good stuff. If you've guys got, great memorable hunts that you want to share with us, we certainly encourage you to do that. And, we'd love to share in those discussions with you guys. The Facebook group, the HP Outdoors Waterfowl Podcast Listeners Group on Facebook is the best way to do that typically, but emails work. Any other social platforms work too. So, anything else, Dan, that you want to add to the segment before we wrap it up?
This coming Saturday is the last Saturday for archery, so after that, it's game on for me. So I'm getting pretty excited and ready to roll here. I better get my boat ready for maybe some possible diver duck hunts.
I'm sure you're gonna hunt some divers, but anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Our reflection back on some of our past hunts. All right, Dan, so we're at that time of year where you're finally putting away the archery equipment, and I'm still waiting for my duck season to start. And, it's getting colder. We're getting down into the upper 50s now, so it's getting there, but I'm not quite there yet. But anything else you want to add before we close out this week's episode?
We talked about it a little bit a couple episodes ago, but we have a ton of coots hanging around already. So, if the birds are following them, this is a great time to deploy your coot arsenal if you have one or think about getting one.
Yep. Seen a lot of reports of that myself. So definitely something to keep in mind. And before we close out this week's show, we want to take just a moment to thank the partners of our show that at least in part help make the show possible. Sitka Gear, Sport Ear. If you're interested in any kind of sport ear hearing protection, you can use the HP Outdoors discount code for 10% off your purchase through their website. Our friends over at DeLorme, you can use the discount code HP Outdoors. That is case sensitive, so all capital letters, but you can use that for a discount on the Earthmate app. And we've talked about how they've recently revamped the app to include landowner information and game management boundaries and things like that. So a lot of great stuff coming out from the guys over at DeLorme. Definitely encourage you guys to check them out. We also like to thank Big Al Silhouette Decoys and Higdon Outdoors for their support of the program. So if you all are in the market for any kind of waterfowl related gear, please consider them when making your buying decisions, as they support our efforts here at the show. So that's pretty much it. And let's go ahead and close out this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed our trip down memory lane and talking about some of our past hunts. If you'd like to check out any of the past episodes of the show, you can go to iTunes and check them out. We encourage you to subscribe and fill out a 5-star rating and review if you're so inclined. This is the time of year we all look forward to, so make sure you're getting out, putting your time in, enjoy it while it's here. It'll be summer again before you know it, and we'll be looking forward to the next season. So enjoy it. Best of luck to you. For Dan, I'm Josh. Take care.